today. Censorship in Argentina and the UK. Positive news for Bitcoin and new leaks from the NSA. Your host is Rick Falkvinge, and this is Liberties Report.
This report is presented by Private Internet Access.
Good evening. Welcome to Liberties Report, July 5. Today we're going to talk about censorship. Argentina has seen it fit to censor the Pirate Bay like so many European countries before it, and it has the exact same effect, drawing a lot of attention to the Pirate Bay, with the censorship itself being utterly ineffective. In fact, local activists group made sure that the local copyright industry, who had been pushing for this censorship, KPIF, that their website was more or less immediately redirected to being a proxy for the Pirate Bay itself. Meanwhile, this shows a non-understanding on behalf of the copyright industry how local privacy of location really works. That people who are in Argentina and would otherwise be subjected to such censorship, at the tap of an icon can choose to appear to be in the United States, Europe, or Southeast Asia instead, that being the end of censorship. We're also seeing censorship of Google, with this misdirected right to be forgotten judgment. Many people who don't want their embarrassing news stories to show up are now requesting that to be delisted in Google searches for their name. This is a new form of censorship which does not take into account that Google, by any old standard, is an investigative news agency or a librarian, where it would be utterly unthinkable for the government to go in and say, we will not allow you to present any negative information for this individual. Google, however, were a bit smart about the whole situation and notified the newspapers when they removed something from its index. Of course, having the effect that such newspapers would pull on the headlines all over again. This financial manager who almost caused the 2008-2009 meltdown single-handedly is requesting for all the negative news to be removed for his mismanagement. Yeah, so that kind of backfired. More censorship in the United Kingdom. They have had plans for a pornography filter for some time. For some reason, the British don't like pornography. No sex, please. We're British. This obviously doesn't take into account that pornography is a very popular form of entertainment, not mentioning being a very natural activity. However, the British don't like to think of the children narrative, and so has had the net censored. And as predictable as the progression of the hands of a clock, this censorship turns out to cover a lot more than just pornography. It turns out to cover actually 20% of the most popular websites, which is a huge amount of material online. What we learn from this is that censorship will always be abused by those who control it. It has never stayed to its original justification, even if that would be a justifiable means, which pornography most certainly is not. Moving on to finance, Bitcoin. We've seen the Bitcoin exchange rate stabilize around 640, 650 after taking a deep dive in the past months, having been around 450 for some time. There is an enormous amount of positive financial news for cryptocurrency right now. The most recent being that the U.S. Marshal Service auction of 30,000 Bitcoin from the Silk Road seizure went to a venture capitalist, all of it, who is intending to use these 30,000 coin to boost liquidity in emerging markets. To see an $18 to $20 million deal like that was unthinkable for Bitcoin, well, just half a year ago. So we're really seeing Bitcoin gain legitimacy and long-term longevity in ways we haven't before. And to underscore that, the Kuwaiti Financial Center was suggesting the other day that oil should be traded for Bitcoin. That would be enormous, because whatever currency oil is traded in is a major factor in the portfolio for currency reserves around the world, the vaults that countries keep with essentially their treasure. If oil is traded for Bitcoin, that means that such currency reserves would be rebalanced around the world, and buying a new currency for the equivalent of a couple of $100 billion worth is nothing in such a rebalancing. If oil is traded for Bitcoin, there is going to be an earthquake, not just to the exchange rate, but to currency markets all over. That would obviously also mean that the dollar gets a serious hit, one it may not even recover from. Finally, privacy. We've seen the Snowden leaks that started just over a year ago taking on increasing importance, and we've seen a new leak from the NSA recently that was not from Snowden, nota bene, about the source code to the X-Keyscore program, which wiretaps, well, frankly, the whole world. And we've learned a bit more about who the NSA consider to be a target for wiretapping, who's a potential terrorist, who is somebody that the government spy agencies need to keep an extra eye on. And it turns out that if you're trying to keep privacy, if you're using encryption, if you're even reading privacy-related blogs, such as Boing Boing, then you are a target, not just locally in the United States, but worldwide. And we learned that from a leak of the actual source code used at the National Security Agency in the United States. There's no reason to believe that the GCHQ or their accomplices, other accomplices around the world, are behaving anything differently. This is, as far as I know, criminal behavior. But the lesson here is not that the NSA and their ilk are regarding anybody who's safeguarding privacy as a criminal. The lesson here is for the NSA that whatever you're doing, it will leak to the world. And if you're not trusting the citizens of the world, if you're betraying the trust of the citizens you're supposed to be serving, the world will find out. It will leak, and you will be held accountable for it. And that, I think, in the end, is positive news. Transparency prevails. This has been Liberties Report, July 5, 2014. I'm Rick.
This report is presented by Private Internet Access.
Liberties Report is produced using exclusively free software.